we're starting to run out of genuinely dysfunctional warrior weapons. And I, quite frankly, wasn't prepared for such an apocalyptic scenario. Seeing myself content with warrior weapon is so unexpected, it should come with a jumpscare warning. That said, Longbow feels like a breath of fresh air in an atmosphere that critically needs one. Sort of like opening a window after your mobile carpet introduces alternative source of biogas to your domain. You can probably already tell I'm very bad at positive reinforcement, and if I won't manage to improvise something funny on the way, entertainment value of this video can eat shit, because there's very little to criticize about Longbow in its entirety and much to praise. Starting with auto attack. You know stuff's good when even the nothing burger that auto chain generally is deserves a compliment. Dual shot fires 2 arrows instead of 1. Firing twice as much arrow per arrow means Longbow generates adrenaline faster and handles blindness and ages slightly better, which isn't worth selling your soul to Pokimane or any other demon, but it's most we can expect from auto attack, and it's certainly appreciated. Fan of Fire, also known as Average Caveman, fires 3 arrows that spread out in a cone, each dealing damage, applying burning, and piercing targets, with added benefit of hitting the same target up to 3 times. So, something adrenaline economy, you know the drill. Anyhow, for some reason power damage of this skill is exact same across all 3 game modes, which means it only sucks in instance PvE, where you're supposed to pump out over 30k DPS to avoid getting kicked from the group, and it's reasonably high everywhere else. For some reason, it even does more burning in PvP than in PvE, which means it's extremely rare example of a skill that is objectively numerically stronger in competitive modes than in PvE. That being the case weirds me out a little, as certain builds that work in versus modes don't work in PvE due to lack of proper scaling, where it usually is completely opposite. Having both strike and condition damage in the realm of good is the ultimate enable for hybrid builds, and that fills my dark malnourished heart with joy. Moving over. Arcing Arrow is a curious example of a skill that doesn't really know what to do with itself. It is an AoE that in PvE applies burning alongside having perfectly acceptable power scaling, while in PvP it does no conditions at all, while also dealing exactly the same amount of damage as Fan of Fire does in melee. The amount of damage in question is acceptable on aforementioned because it applies a solid bit of burning, but power-dedicated skills don't really have this excuse. Further than this, the cast time of the former is 1/4 second, while the latter is 3/4. That combined with slow projectile speed means even in melee there is a significant delay between pressing a button and ability landing, which you can probably guess makes the ability less than reliable. With abysmal projectile speed adding significant delay noticeable even if you aim it directly under your feet, combined with somewhat long cast time, this skill feels clunky and unreliable to use even against stunned or already downed opponents. It is no doubt a turd on top of a cake, but it only needs cast time reduction to be on par with better half of warrior skills. Next in line is Smoldering Arrow, which coming with next to no damage and only having a blind to its name really seem to not be much. Out of necessity it dazes in PvE, so it has at least any function in instanced content, but besides that, blindness it is. I can understand why would someone frown and grunt at the very mention of this skill. After all, blindness alone doesn't seem as that powerful of an effect, but on the other hand, Quick Smoldering Arrow can completely negate many high-impact abilities like Jade Winds, Chilled to the Bone, Tailored Victory, Prime Light Beam, Headbutt, and even Execute of Battle Standard. Furthermore, due to Smoldering Arrow having 3 charges to its name, spamming this skill at Rampaging Warrior or Leech Form Necromancer is enough to shut down surprisingly high amount of their otherwise crushingly oppressive pressure. It maybe does not elevate utility of this skill beyond mediocre, but it doesn't need to. Confidently calling an ability not useless is already a compliment in broader scope of Warrior's entire arsenal. And weapon whose worst 2 skills are, first a bit difficult to land for its power budget, and the second having specific use against high-impact single-hit abilities, isn't nowhere near the level of half-assery that deserves scrutiny. Going further, Pin Down doesn't have a single bloody difference between its PvE and versus mode version, it does exact same dogshit damage, applies exact same amount of bleeding, and immobilizes. This skill feels appropriate in function. Sure, it does no direct damage, but as a control option with conditions on top, it certainly doesn't lack impact. It could do damage, especially considering that many skills with immobilize do damage as well, but it's not like the skill doesn't excel at its primary function. It's an acceptable CC with added benefit of lengthy bleeding. Last but not least, Combustive Shot is a sort of solid area denial, pulsing somewhat strong damage and burning on initial impact and every 3 following seconds, scaling duration of the AoE with adrenaline investment. It is certainly something, though it does more impact on psyche of opponent rather than his health bar, as 3 seconds of interval between pulses is a long time, to be frank. Entire duration of Endure Pain is 3 seconds. Cast time of Battle Standard is 2 seconds. Your expected lifespan within a line of sight from a Soul Beast is 1 second. Combustive Shot is yet another skill that failed to catch up to ever-increasing pace of the game, and was subsequently delegated into piece of mediocrity. Fortunately, it landed on the very top of the pile and has good enough view from the dumpster to keep side-eyeing the meta with malicious intent. That said, it cannot be ignored that Combustive Shot is long overdue for functionality changes. GW2 picked up the pace significantly even between End of Dragon's release and today, and 3 seconds long gaps in instances of damage suddenly became a significant problem. In summary, Longbow is a conceptually good weapon that aged poorly. Build-up of defensive utility in the meta made its core burst practically a decoration. Some of the skills lost their identity along the way, some have exact same damage numbers in all 3 game modes despite all modes being balanced separately, and some of its skills are unnecessarily slow. There exists a term, death by 1,000 cuts, which describes a situation where many otherwise meaningless downsides combine to bring down something that would overcome easily each one or even few of them, but not all at the same time. I am guessing someone nitpicky enough would be able to find significant downsides in literally every weapon in the game, but I doubt someone is going to find another example of fixing an underperforming power skill by slapping 1 stack of burning on it and calling it a day. At this point, I must sound like a broken record, but it isn't 2014 anymore and the old stuff is long overdue for an update. Unfortunately, until ArenaNet realizes that, we are all positively boned. Crabface out.